Hi, this is Diane Carbo of Caregiver Relief, and today I have Tracey S. Lawrence with me. She's the founder of Grand Family Planning, and she's written the groundbreaking book, Dementia Sucks. Tracey, I'm excited to have you here today, and that's what we're going to discuss today, the challenges of caregiving. Dementia sucks.
Thanks, Diane. It's great to be here. I'm delighted to be talking to you about this very thorny subject. And it's funny, and it's not so funny, of course. But the thing that I've learned is that most people who've been through watching a loved one deteriorate, they all know that this is a terrible disease. I've also been very fortunate in that both of my parents who did succumb to dementia also had tremendous senses of humor that was very helpful in getting through, because there at times, well, it was really heartbreaking to watch what they were going through. They were still able to laugh, and that was extremely helpful.
You know, you either have the best or the worst, or sometimes the best and the worst qualities of a person present themselves during the disease process, depending on the type of dementia they have and the part of the brain that's affected. When they still have that sense of humor and can express it, it's fun. It makes the day so much easier because laughter releases hormones and it makes us feel better.
Yes, and it's so much better to laugh than to cry.
Both are necessary emotions. Emotions.
Yeah.
But
but listen, we all know there's nothing better than a good cry from time to time.
Yes. Yes.
On the day-to-day, to be able to just have a good laugh about something. And look, the people we love who develop cognitive decline, even if they can't remember your name or if they're confused about who you are, they still generally know that you have a relationship. And they can be reminded of instances, and the connections can still be made. Something I like to offer people also is that dementia, it's not linear, which is to say that if somebody gets a diagnosis, they start losing their memory, and it's usually the short-term memory is usually the first to go. They may still have a lot of really good days where they have a lot of clarity and they're extremely lucid and high-functioning. And even after they may have a period where they suddenly take a bad turn, they may return. That's one of the reasons that I say dementia sucks, because you're always on quicksand. You never know who you're going to be talking to on a given day. You don't know who's going to show up.
Exactly.
You have to be flexible, and you have to be ready to embrace whoever does show up and have reasonable expectations of that person. So many people who are beginning their journey and just starting to grapple with dementia really don't understand what it is that they're up against. They don't understand what their loved one is experiencing. They don't understand. They'll get upset with them because they don't respond the way you would expect them to.
Exactly. I have a situation where I was called in by a family. They had a sister who was very high-functioning, very bright older woman, young at heart for sure, working in a high-power position. Mm-hmm. And they only saw her at holidays because she was working all the time. And she was in her late 60s. She would always come to them. Well, one year something happened and she couldn't come to them, and they ended up coming to her place. And what they found shocked them. She must have had hundreds of Post-it notes with messages to herself all over the place. Mm-hmm. She was able to hold it together, to go to work, to function. I'm sure she had issues at work that people were noticing, but it wasn't enough to alert anybody at the time, or that people just passed it off for whatever. Oh, it might be stress or whatever. I was called in because they realized that there was definitely something going on, but she was always able to hold it together enough that she could hide it. And I think that's something that family members don't realize. A person with dementia is in the early stages, and some it can be very slow. It could be 20 It could even be 30 years from the time they diagnose something going on till a person passes. One of the things that I find that a lot of my clients complain about is they didn't show any change in the mini mental status, but the family members that are with them all the time see things happening, but they've been able to do it well enough that, and it's just a part of the brain that's been affected, and how high functioning some people are, that they can hide their cognitive deficits for a long time.
Absolutely. And then different kinds of dementia present differently. Like, for instance, my dad had vascular dementia. And one of the most frustrating things about his dementia was his symptoms kept changing. So,
yes.
Because for those who aren't aware, vascular dementia it creates strokes, or what they call mini strokes. And there is a more technical term, but since I'm not a doctor, I'm not going to search for it right now.
It's TIAs, is
TIAs,
trans-ischemic attacks.
Yeah. So, but what's happening is that different parts of the brain are being affected at different times, and you never know when one of those strokes is going to go off. You may be having a conversation with someone, and they seem perfectly rational and lucid, and all of a sudden, like in my father's case, his speech began to slur. And over a matter of time, in the same day, it cleared up again. So you really don't know what's going to happen at any given time. Other types of dementia are more cumulative. When you're talking about things like Alzheimer's disease, where you have plaques building up in the brain and different parts of the brain are affected, the concentration of the obstruction will impact a particular portion of the brain that is a controller of different functions. So you can it's a little more predictive. Right, or there's a little bit more consistency. But then, just for fun, someone can develop psychosis. And what a lot of people don't know about Alzheimer's disease in particular is that the people who have it can become violent. And it's shocking when someone who formerly was a very demure person like my mom was, all of a sudden they become combative. My mother actually got thrown out of rehab for threatening people with knives. She got into the dining room where in the rehab facility where she was receiving physical therapy, and they had steel knives with like a little serrated edge. The likelihood that she could actually hurt somebody with one of those things was pretty remote. But the behavior was alarming enough that they were afraid that she would hurt herself or hurt another patient or one of the staff. And she was really agitated, and she felt threatened, and she wanted to protect herself.
Yeah.
And I got called, and when I went to see her at the hospital, because they called the police and had her thrown out. Because they could not handle her on their own. And I couldn't get there fast enough to intervene. And as I'm on my way over to the rehab, they called me and they said, no, she's not here anymore. She's over at Chilton Hospital. You can find her there.
Did they place her in a senior behavioral health unit?
Actually, she was moved to a psychiatric hospital.
Yeah, the behavioral health unit, yeah. Because I did senior behavioral health, and I think one of the most frustrating things for family members is when they get to that stage, not all of them do, but a lot of them do, they end up in a senior behavioral health unit, hopefully run by a psychiatrist that can work with them on adjusting medications and have the right behavioral approaches. I know in our unit, we had a padded room. We had very low lighting. There was a mattress, a very low mattress. Everything was padded because we would get people that would attack us. And it's not just the physical. There's also a sexual component that can happen with some men and women, get very hypersexual.
Yep.
And that's very disturbing and upsetting to many family members as well. So,
yeah, my mom's very hyper, let's say, flirtatious face.
Yes. I had a pastor's wife. They've given to their church for forever. They ran the church and stuff. Lovely little lady. But all she would do is, at one stage of her disease, was to swear. She was dropping F-bombs all day long. And people stopped coming because they were offended. I'm sure every time she said it was one time she held back when she wanted to say it.
No doubt, no doubt.
God bless her. God bless her.
Yeah. When my mom was at that same rehab facility, she was in a semi-private room with a lovely woman who didn't have dementia. Very, very calm, lovely person. And my mom told me the first time I went to visit her at this rehab center, she was at lunch, and her roommate was in the room. So I went to the room and I asked her roommate where she was. She told me that she thought Mom was in the dining hall. So I went to and I found her, and I told my mom. I said, "Yeah, your roommate told me where to find you." And she said, "Oh, that one turns tricks all night long." And I said, "What?" And she's telling me how, and I'm like, "Mom," and she's no, she keeps me up all night. The traffic in that room, and I'm like, "Oh my God." Now, there are some people who who have these stories, and their families don't know them or unaccustomed to these kinds of things. I had another friend who, when he first transferred his mother to assisted, she was in cognitive decline as well, told my friend that she'd been raped. And,
yes, I've had these before. Yes.
Yeah, and my friend didn't know what to do because I had. What do you do? Is she telling the truth? Is she not telling the truth? What do we do? And these are all things that come up. You have
sometimes those were suppressed, and I can tell from other instances that I've had where women have done that. They have held something in their long-term memory for forever that they didn't share with anybody, or if they did, it was very few people, and they were victims of a sexual assault that they never reported, whether it was a family member or an acquaintance or whatever. That is something sometimes that happens too. I've heard this several times in my course of my nursing, and people start to ask questions, and you just don't know what to believe. But the first thing they do is they investigate everybody, the staff, everybody, when those are situations.
Yeah, I've heard lots of those stories. Look, and there's actually in my book, I talk about how it's the old Stephen Stills song, "Love the One You're With." People find comfort in the company of others, and if the person you're with isn't exactly the person you would like them to be, they just turn them into that person. The level of creativity is really impressive.
There's a downside to this because we all need to be touched and we all need to be loved. And the families of the mother or the father or whoever, if the mother is sleeping around with everybody in the building, because not that she's sleeping around, she's just climbing in bed and hugging and whatever, or having an infatuation with another man, it really can be upsetting to the family members of those individuals. One of the things that I have to remind my clients when they get upset, because the nursing home or the memory care unit's going to call and tattle and say, "Mom was in bed with somebody," or your husband or your father was found in bed with somebody else. It doesn't even mean they were even being sexual. They were just maybe snuggling or canoodling or whatever for comfort sometimes. And we have to remember that people with dementia are living in the moment. They are truly just in the moment. They are not thinking about the past because they've lost that part of them, a lot of it. And they definitely can't think of the future, so all they have is the very present. And Maslow's theory of needs, if you're hungry, you can't feel love. The hierarchy of needs, where you want to get fed and cleaned and dried and loved until you can go on to being a better person. They're stuck just meeting their needs. And that's something that people don't understand as well. Just like they don't understand the negative, challenging behaviors. They don't understand that sometimes the hypersexual is not something they can control, nor is the wandering into somebody else's bed or having an infatuation with somebody.
Yeah, sure. And then, of course, if the person in question is still legally married to someone in their right mind. I mean, that's so hurts to maintain a balanced view of that. If your mom has dementia and she's cheating on your dad, but she doesn't even know that your dad is dead anymore, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
It's a difficult situation, and and it's also in part why people who are in a relationship or in a marriage where one person develops dementia, the other person is in such peril because the stress of having to care for or be concerned with the well-being of a person who no longer recognizes you or interacts with you as the partner that they've always been to you. It's an awful situation to be in.
I have a client, they're both in their late 70s. He's now in the middle stages of dementia. She is legally blind. She can still see and do a lot, but it's just shadows, amazing stuff on the computer. They've only been married 13 years, and she sat and showed me their wedding ceremony and stuff. He came from Scotland. She's from here. They got married in Florida and then moved out west, and now they're in Myrtle Beach. And it's amazing to me. She saw things in him. She hadn't really known it. They'd been dating for 4 years internationally and stuff, and we spend quite a lot of time together. She saw bits and pieces of things that could have been diagnosing dementia, but she didn't realize it. This last year with COVID, he's deteriorated dramatically as far as his cognitive status. She's 100% caring for him. They have this dog that she really doesn't want because it's a challenge because she's a high-maintenance dog. And she only has it because of him, but he doesn't even remember the dog's name. He has what they call expressive aphasia. He's not able to, and you could see this from his wedding pictures and his videos, that he's always a very expressive man. I told him he could have been in the movie The Mask with Jim Carrey because the way he makes faces all the time and smiles and stuff. But he can't express himself, so he looks at you and he tries to express himself through his face, his emotions. He rarely speaks, and when he does speak, it's always a surprise to me, and he'll give me a good response, and I'm like, oh, wow. But he's now to the point where he's not able to drive. This last year's just really, all the isolation and stuff, really, he's done some stair stepping, where he'd go down and then he'd maintain and go down and maintain. It's difficult. She's trying to keep him at home. She is reluctant to have outside sources. She's reluctant to consider assisted living or independent living, that they need to move closer to her family because she'd have so much more support, and it would be good for her because one of the things caregivers of people with dementia, and this is another reason why it sucks, is the stress causes illness and physical, emotional, and mental illness in the caregiver.
Yes,
and
dementia too.
Yes, exactly, exactly. And the statistics are not very good in favor of caregiver of somebody with dementia. It's like, what is it, 63% of the spouses die before the person that they're caring for does? Yes.
And it's horrifying and frightening. And for people who have couples like that in their lives, they really need to pay attention, because if they don't, they're going to get a phone call one day, and then they're going to have to take care of somebody who is demented without any of the backup information that was, resident in the mind of the person who was taking care of them, because they're gone.
A way to cope is being in denial. These spouses are in denial, and I worry about this woman and her husband, because she's got high blood pressure, she's losing her sight, she's been diabetic for forever, she's got a lot of things, and the stress she's living with, and he's just starting to wander, it is traumatizing. One point I wanted to make to people is there is a word, it's habilitation, not rehabilitation. And when a person with dementia loses a function, like they're unable to express themselves, they're unable to reach for something, not able to follow a command, a multiple-step command. That means that's a function they're going to lose. They will not be able to rehab and relearn it a different way. Right. And that's because their brain does not, their neural pathways are no longer connecting. In fact, what we're seeing as a person with dementia has is brain cell death over time.
Yes. And once that happens, I think the most frustrating thing for so many of us is that these people with dementia can no longer learn anything, because learning is based on being able to remember. And
yes.
If your short-term memory doesn't function anymore, you can't learn a new task, even a simple one. So it's very important for people to know. I also wanted to raise one other issue about dementia. I want people to hear this because it's important. Before someone has dementia, if you are in a position to perhaps care for that person, before they develop dementia, you can be appointed to be able to represent that person. And it's extremely important to keep your eye on the clock and not wait, because if they do develop dementia and you are the person they would want to be their go-to person, their representative, and they have not formally appointed you legally, then you're going to have a big problem when they develop dementia and you both know that you're the person. You've talked about it, but now an attorney, an elder law attorney who meets with your parent or loved one will recognize that this person is no longer cognitively intact. If they're no longer cognitively intact, then they cannot appoint you to be their spokesperson, and you have to then go to the next step, which is guardianship, which is a nightmare.
That's just what I was going to say. Oh, Lord, that's a nightmare.
I just want to raise that point because
that's a very good point.
Yeah, and
very
it's
good point.
Good reason why dementia really does suck, because you don't know when it's going to happen or if it's going to happen. Not everyone develops dementia, and we all hope. We all live in, and some say denial, our loved ones will not develop dementia. I didn't want my parents to develop dementia, but they did, and I am so grateful that they did some smart things before they got sick, one of them being that they appointed me and my brother to be their POA and their healthcare proxy. Thank God. You don't know, and so if you don't know, and your parent is still cognitively intact, then I encourage you, please, have a conversation with them. If you want to know how to have the conversation, I have resources that you can access that talk about what you need to know and how you can approach your loved one to have a productive conversation.
Good point. One of the podcasts I'm doing on a regular basis is advanced planning. Mm-hmm. And while we're talking about that, I'll just say that advanced planning is an ongoing process. It evolves over time due to your ability. You should start advanced planning in your 20s. That sounds crazy, but it's true. And having those discussions. But what you want at 20 and what you want at 30 and then what you want at 50, 60, and 70 is so different. And you want to address as your health changes, as your physical, mental, and financial health changes. So an issue that many people, they want to be secretive. They want to hide. They're afraid their family members are going to take their money or spend their money or I don't know what. But in that case, Yeah, and I will tell you that there are attorneys out there that will be your healthcare power of attorney, be your power over finances as well. There are organizations and people that will do that so that if you don't have a trusted family member or friend and you still want to be secretive about it, but want to be in control, then you have that conversation with an elder care attorney.
Yes, absolutely. It's so vitally important. And to your point about starting early, what a lot of people don't realize is that when a child is 18 in the United States, they are considered liberated. So every child over the age of 18 needs to write a letter appointing someone, generally a parent, as their health care proxy, because if they get sick, And parents don't realize this, and they really need to know. If a child gets sick, and you may be paying for their health insurance, you probably are, and you go to the hospital, and your child had an accident, you dutifully run down to the hospital with their health care information, the doctor doesn't have to talk, because unless you have a letter from your child that says, in the event that I am sick, my parent has the right to talk to you. So it's very important that parents understand that, and it can lead to a lot of frustration, and it can be a large impediment to getting your child the care that they need and to being able to participate in their care. But if you have this, if your child has this letter and you have a copy of the letter and it's duly executed the way it needs to be in whatever place your child lives, then you will have the ability to speak with the healthcare professionals that take care of them. So, no, 20 is not too soon.
and you know what? There's so many out there, the baby boomers who have kids in their 20s and parents in their 80s and 90s and 100-year-olds now that are that sandwich generation that are dealing on both the ends. And I have had several clients that have had car accidents with the kid while they're trying to take care of the parent at home, and it's a balancing act. God bless them.
Oh, yeah. It is extremely difficult, and it's a lot of pressure. And these extended families, multi-generational families. I had one client family where it was 4 generations, from
Yep.
grandma to the grandkids. They're out there, and lots of
Yes.
them are living longer, having children later, and so the families encompass a broad spectrum of ages, of experience. You can have somebody who's been retired for 30 years being cared for by someone who is, maybe still working, and who has children who are working, and who also have children who are in school. So it ranges.
And because baby boomers haven't prepared for retirement, we're at the cusp where the pensions are no longer there for a lot of us, that
Right.
You had to depend on your 401k, and you don't have that money because you've spent it sending the kids to college and weddings and whatever, and you're not as prepared as you would like to be a long life, because there's a caregiver shortage, and it's only going to get worse as we get older. There's going to be a lot more intergenerational living. We're going to go back to the way things used to be.
Yes.
Families taking care of their own again instead of being placed in a home.
Yes, and I have a vision of communities where people who aren't necessarily in the same family, but
Yes.
have a commonality of goals, will band
Yep.
together and live together and support each other. Yeah.
Yep.
Go there.
We need to go there. There's a lack of affordable senior housing as well, and there's more and more seniors becoming homeless. So they rent rooms in homes. In fact, I just talked to a lady yesterday. She inherited an old farmhouse and redid it. She was an aide at one time, and she's opened up her home and made it into the board and care is under the same direction as an assisted living.
Uh-huh.
And she's taking care of many of her own family members that are aging,
Brilliant.
as well as outsiders. I think she has 6 people that she cares for and the different ranges of needs. This is how she's making her living as she's getting older, because she's healthy. This is in a rural area. Those kinds of facilities and the lack of caregivers is there. So what do? You get into a community setting like this where people share expenses of the housing. They make appointments to go to the doctors at similar times. It's a routine that people get into. They go to the hairdressers, and women that need to go to hairdressers all go at the same time. So the transportation is taken care of for everybody. And that we'll see that in the future.
Yeah, I'm certain of that. And it has to go that way because it makes the most sense. It's like, how do we utilize the resources that we have to the maximum benefit of most people? And I have a friend who has a daughter who is profoundly disabled. She was born with multiple birth defects, and the child is now in her 30s, and the mom is in her 60s. And And what's even more vexing is because she no longer qualifies for school programs. I mean, the things that she had available before she turned, 21 were all more plentiful. Now, in her 30s, there's a real scarcity. And we've talked at length about developing communities where aging people can live with these profoundly disabled young people so that they can interact. And the old people who are still, highly capable and lucid and plugged in can help with these kids, spend time with them, talk to them, interact with them. And it's great for everyone. Because the thing that we've learned is that when people have a purpose, when they have someone to care for, it makes their lives so much richer, and they want to live longer. When we put people in facilities where they don't feel like they have a purpose, where they feel discarded, and they're just counting down the hours and all they're ever doing is watching TV, these are the people who develop severe cognitive impairment and depression and become seriously ill for the rest of their lives. And those who are in a community where they are interacting, where they have socialization, where they have opportunities to dine together and listen to music together, dance, enjoy movies and things of that nature, it just makes all the difference in the world.
It does. It absolutely does. And one of the things when I hear your title of your book, Dementia Sucks, the first thing I think of always with dementia patients is you look into their eyes and light behind them and you're having an interaction and it's a good moment. Mm-hmm. And we have to hang on to those moments because in the next second you can be looking at them again and that light is gone out of their eyes. And they are not who you thought they were at the time. You've lost that connection with them. And that's brutal because every single time that happens, and it can happen multiple times a day, it gives a family hope that maybe, just maybe, they'll stay that way and they're going to be their old self again.
Yes. And I used to refer to those episodes as my parents' visit.
Yes.
Daddy,
they're a very good point.
And you never know when they're gonna go back to where they were, but you got to enjoy them while they're around.
Yes. And that's the hardest.
Yeah, it really truly is. And you don't know how long it's going to last, and you don't know. You just don't know. And it really does. It's exciting when they come back, but it breaks your heart when they leave again.
Tracey, I am so grateful to have you here today to promote your book and to discuss dementia because Lord knows we are the experts and every family member becomes an expert. You know more than the doctors do, and they'll be educating the doctors and other healthcare professionals because they know their loved one the best. So on that note, I'm going to say to my caregivers, remember, you're the most important part of the caregiving equation. Without you, it all falls apart. So please learn to be gentle with yourself. Practice self-care every day because you are worth it. Tracey, until next week, I thank you.
Thank you, Diane. Have a great weekend and looking forward to talking again soon.
Okay, bye.
Bye-bye.